And I'm live. Namaste, everyone. Welcome to Satsang on Sunday. And forgive the camera for going in and out of focus. There's nothing I can do about it. I did get myself positioned so I can lean back. I've got my feet up, so I'm ready to go for as long as you guys need me to explore. What are we exploring here? We're not here to gain any kind of specialized knowledge, be it esoteric or spiritual or mundane, because all knowledge is always relative. We're really here to discover underneath all the knowledge, all the experiences, all the conditioning, all the ideas and concepts, there's really a being here. There really is something that is real, that is not an appearance of something else, that is not an illusion, and is not a mirage. But to get to that, we have to be able to come to see that which we have been believing in, but wasn't actually true. I titled today, "The Person is a Mirage." And to make sure this is well understood, I don't want to present it like everything's an illusion, there's nobody here, nothing is real. I find that kind of teaching to be quite misleading, even though on one level it is true. But there has to be somebody here to recognize there's nobody here. An illusion can't have itself. There's something that isn't an illusion, something that isn't a mirage. And that's what we want to get to. That is self-realization. That is liberation. So when I say the person, what is the person? What do we mean by that? A lot of teachers use that term. Mooji uses it all the time. That's how he refers to what? What is he referring to? Well, let me give a simple example of this mirage of the person. Say you know somebody, and you have a friend, and there's this other person who is a mutual friend, but friend A, let's say, says, I don't really trust him. He's been saying a lot of stuff about people. He's not really honest, right? And you believe that. You believe this friend of yours. And so whenever you meet person B, you are interacting with them as somebody who isn't truthful, who isn't trustworthy, right? That's the image you hold of them. And that image of them is what you interact with. And you believe that image is actually them. Okay? So you're not interacting with them. You're interacting with the image you have of them. What you believe to be there. Right? Now, let's say that something happens and you find yourself stuck with this person somewhere. And you get into conversation and you begin to realize that none of what the other friend had said about them is true. That was simply their perception. You got kind of sucked into their mirage. And this is not theoretical. I'm sure we've all had this experience of meeting somebody and then them turning out to be quite different than what we thought they were, both positively and negatively, right? But while we were believing them to be one way, we were interacting with them. Right? Now, what is that? We have projected upon their behavior a preconceived notion of what that behavior means. In other words, who they are. Now, they are there. The behaviors are there. But our idea about them is a projection on them. Just like the mirage in the desert is a projection on the experience of the desert, is it not? hold my hands up, it goes blurry. I mean, the desert's there, the heat, the sun, the thirst, and all of that, but the mirage isn't. There's nothing actually out there. And it doesn't matter how many self-help courses you take, how much you apply the law of attraction, how many skills you acquire. You hire the coach to learn how to run faster and farther. You're never going to get there because there's nothing there. It is an illusion. It is a mirage. But believing that it is actually something other than what is here, we interact with that belief. Now, if you didn't have that belief, if you were in the desert and you were thirsty and you knew for a fact that it was a mirage, even though you were having that experience, you wouldn't act on it. Now, this is the way a lot of our illusions are. I mean, we still talk about sunrise and sunset, when in fact it's Earth turn, right? The sun isn't moving, at least relative to us, right? But the appearance to our senses is still the same. Now, what does that have to do with the person? Well, going back to that first example, you were interacting with an idea you had about them and not them. You were projecting upon what was there, right? A particular kind of functioning as an individual, your idea of who they were and interacting with that. Now, look at everything in life. Look at your life, because it's one thing to have an illusory impression of someone else, but what about yourself? Do we do that to ourselves? Well, the answer is yes, we do. We assume that our concept of ourselves is in fact ourselves. Now, what is actually there, right? Now, in any individual life, there's functioning going on, right? There's sensations and emotions, there's experiences, there's memories, there's history, there's the description. The body has certain characteristics, right? It's ethnicity, its gender, its location, the language it speaks. That's all there, right? And there's a natural functioning to it, right? But when I look at the functioning and I imagine there is an entity there that is acting, I have projected the sense of self on something that doesn't have a sense of self. That is the person. That is what is meant by the person is a mirage. That is, it is a projection onto that which isn't a person, isn't an entity, isn't sentient or self-aware. That which is self-aware projects its own sense of self onto that which isn't. And this is the whole essence of the great illusion, the great mistake. And when that is seen through, the realization that I have been projecting me, my sense of self, onto that which is not a self, is self-realization. That's why the person is a mirage. That is, it is a projection on stuff that actually is there, but is only a functioning and not a self-aware entity. Imagine there's a robot that is so lifelike you can't tell the difference. And they're getting pretty close. They're getting pretty close to making lifelike robots. For the life of me, I have no idea what the point is, other than people are into it. But that's another. But I digress. There was actually somebody, I think he worked for Google, and there was some kind of AI. I think it shouldn't be called artificial intelligence. It should become simulated intelligence. That's what it should be called, because it's not intelligent. It is a functioning that imitates or simulates intelligence. And it'll never be conscious because it's a functioning, right? But there's this fellow at Google, and it came up with some kind of an algorithm, and he was convinced that it was self-aware. I don't know any of the details about it. It was a robotic thing. It was some kind of an AI program. And he was convinced it was self-aware. I mean, he managed to convince other people too. He even got so far as to contracting, I think, his senator and like to try to get some legislation to give this thing rights. Okay. Now, they're going to get so lifelike at some point that you're not going to be able to tell the difference. The only way we're not going to know, because we won't be able to inhabit them and see, is there anybody there? But we will project on it the sense of self. It's inevitable. We project it on our cars, right? We project it on all sorts of things. We anthropomorphize so many different things. You know, the world's like a bunch of cartoon characters that we're all projecting stuff on. And there will be AI rights groups. I'm sure it's coming. It's going to happen. Now, how do you tell? Well, you can't. And there's no difference between that, some AI thing that functions and reacts so well that we mistake it for a sentient being, and the organic robot that we call the body-mind complex. There's no difference. Except one will be made out of, circuits and silicon, the other's made out of carbon, but there's no difference. I recently posted in my private group, and if you're not in there, get there. It's on Facebook. About a fellow who's a neurosurgeon. He was a brain surgeon, right? So. And he, at I think 54 years old, had a near-death experience. Now, it was a unique one because the illness that he had literally destroyed his neocortex. There was no more memory, no capacity for language. He had no sense of who he was. It was not all of the areas that the materialistic scientists say is the seat of consciousness were destroyed. He shouldn't have had any consciousness at all. And he fell into the coma, and he had this remarkable experience. And it taught him, as a brain surgeon, that consciousness had nothing to do with the brain, that it was something else altogether. We are projecting upon the whole body-mind mechanism something it doesn't possess. So what isn't a mirage? Well, the easiest thing for me to do is to simply point your attention towards that which is hearing my words right now. What is it that actually cognizes, that point of cognition, that something says, I see that, and there's actually something there? The robot can say that. Siri on my phone can say it. But there's nobody there. It's just sounds. Right? But with you, there is somebody there, something that actually is. And that which is has projected itself on everything else. The eye doesn't see in the sense that I'm talking about it. The eye does not have self-awareness or cognizance of what it is seeing. It is a light collector, nothing more. It collects it, passes it off to a complex bunch of nerves and things, which translate it into electronic impulses, and it ends up being an image. Right? It goes through filters and layers and meaning, and all sorts of stuff is attached to it. It finally gets to a place where there's an image formed. But what's seeing that image? This is something to deeply ponder and notice all the ways in which The moment you project that sense of I or self onto something else, you have given away your power, your authority, your happiness, your freedom, because you have endowed something that has no life with life, and then thought that it was dictating terms to you. Hopefully, this has been clear enough that you'll spend more time paying attention to the cognizance itself and less about what it's cognizing. More attention to the consciousness that is aware and less to what it is aware of. Our attention, out of habit, is constantly going to what it is aware of. It's going to the content. And I'm inviting you to pay more attention to that which is recognizing the content, or cognizing the content, that which is actually conscious, because obviously that is way more important than the content. And if you look closely, you find the content comes and goes, but this cognizing, whatever it is, doesn't. And I say whatever it is, but whatever it is, isn't it you? Isn't it you who are cognizing? So by asking you to pay attention to that consciousness, I'm asking you to pay attention to yourself. And gradually, sometimes quickly, that sense of self, the sense, the projecting of the identity onto something else dissolves. And it comes back home to the realization, oh, I am. All right, I'm going to leave it at that, but I have to take a second here. Make the screen a little bigger so I can actually see the comments, because I've got this big screen, but it's a distance away, because otherwise you wouldn't see me, you'd just see the screen. So, hello everyone. Hello again. Roberto is back in Madrid. Roberto, I've got the feeling that I'm beginning to understand. I do too. Of course, you have been for a while, but you're finally recognizing it. You know, sometimes the conditioning we receive is pretty thick. It's pretty brutal, right? And that sense of identification with it, even when it's negative, the sense of identification with it is very, very strong. But little by little, you keep showing up as you have been. You keep looking, you keep opening, you keep asking the questions. It will inevitably dissolve. You will see the conditioning as conditioning and not as myself. And then you find there's nothing wrong with the conditioning. It's fine, right? Everything is conditioning. Everything is conditioned energy. The plants behind me, you know, my hair, the chair I'm sitting in, as well as thoughts and emotions. It's all conditioned energy. But you are not conditioned energy. You are more subtle. You are the source even of the energy. So I highly concur, Roberto. Yes, you are beginning to understand. Hello, Rosario. Hello, Ava. Got Rosario also in Madrid, Ava in Poland. Romania is represented honorably by Ravi. There's Madeira Island in Portugal, Liza. That's Ursula. And then there's Liza. Hello, Liza. Good to see you. There's Brent in LA. There's Sue in Canada. Hello, Sue. There's thank you for the heart. There's John with horizontal rain, strong winds, fire lightning, hot cup of tea, and ready to go. It sounds like pretty classic fall, winter in Ireland. Yeah. Hello, Mary, and she's out there in New York. Andrew in the UK. Dorothy in Denmark. There's David Elaine, also in England. Hello. Hello, Jerry's. Glad you are here. Yay, I finally found the love stream. Facebook user, you did indeed. Welcome, 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 welcome. There's Daryl. Hello, Daryl. Also, you're also on the East Coast, and there's the Facebook user in Vegas. Maybe that's Amy. Facebook user in California. Hello, Marty. Hi, in Vancouver, Washington. The U.S. Vancouver, not the Canadian Vancouver. There's Barbara in Sweden. Hello, Darren McGee. Hello, Darren. Hi, everyone. I think you might be new. At least I don't recognize the name. Hello, Jennifer. Hello, beings. And Babaji. Hello, hello. Peck, peck, peck. There's Carl. It's not summer anymore in Ireland, no. Nor is it summer here in the Pacific Northwest. It feels very nice, chilly day today, and I don't like to turn the heat on. There's just something about it. It's not as natural, and I like to leave the windows open at night. And I love the cool air when I'm sleeping early in the morning. But I have a lot of blankets. Is Facebook? Is this live on Facebook only, or also on Zoom? It's in 3 places on Facebook: my group, Lisa's group, and Enlightened World Network, and it's also on YouTube. I don't have it on Zoom. No, I'm broadcasting through a system called StreamYard, which is really very, really good. I'm very happy with it. Automatically records and everything. So, hello, Carl. My sense of peace being seems to be in total contrast to my home work life. My sense of peace being also seems to bring an urge not to be here anymore, like my job is done. What gives? Did I spend all this time trying to connect to my true self to have to spend my days energetically polishing turds in the outside world? Thank you. Well, picking up on my theme from the beginning, what is the world other than your projection? You know, when they talk about seeing the snake in the rope, or the mirage in the desert, the mirage is the world. It is the sense of identity that is a sense of a separate self, that sees a world separate from itself and then projects on it all sorts of characteristics, negative and positive. And yes, from that point of perception, you will be polishing turds. Okay? It will seem as though the world is disappointing. Is there anything wrong with the desert? I mean, if you were cruising through the desert, right, in a nice, cool car with wonderful air conditioning that didn't have any problem with the heat, right, buzzing along nice and smoothly, right, would it be a problem? I mean, I've taken little trips out. You know, my son lives in Tempe down in Arizona. I've been to Arizona many times. I've walked out into the desert, and it's harsh, and you got to be careful. And I lived in New Mexico for a while as well, which is the high desert, right? And it's harsh. You know, if I sat down on a rock, I would check around, and a couple of times I found a couple of snakes lurking, so I decided not to sit there. But it's extraordinarily beautiful. I mean, it's breathtaking how beautiful it is. So is there anything wrong with the desert? Is there anything wrong with the world or the way I see it, right? So you have gotten in touch, right, with the sense of peace and being. And of course, there's going to be an urge to want to live there, right? Now, I'm going to ask you to take a nice long look at that feeling of wanting to not be there, that feeling that I don't want to polish turds, right? Look at it very closely, right? Is peace and your beingness something you come and go out of? And if so, what is it that's coming and going out of that peace? Because I want to know you. The peace and the being is great, But I want to know you. And if you're going in and out of it, I want to know who you are. Who is the you that's going in and out of that piece? Notice there's still a sense of identity with someone who has this urge to not be here, who doesn't like the world, who doesn't want to be in it. Right? Now, it's actually a natural progression, because before we sought everything from the world. I want, we want the joy in the relationship and the fun and all of that stuff. And then suddenly the world turns sour on us and we want to get out of it, right? I don't like it anymore. Now, has the world actually changed? Well, the world of humans has, but let's just look at the world as a raw experience. Does any experience in the world come and identify itself and says, I suck, this is horrible, I'm just a turd, needs polishing? Or is it simply an absolutely innocent, natural experience that's arising? And it's got to meet with something, right, that takes a position about it, that cops an attitude about it, right, and says, I don't like this. Who is that I? Is that I a set of qualities that you can describe? Is it a set of attributes that are clearly perceivable? And if you look, you'll find they're subtle, but there'll be thoughts, I don't like this. There'll be a feeling of revulsion, maybe, or aversion. There'll be sensations that go along with it. Those will all be there. But where's the I? Isn't the I that appears to be in those sensations being projected onto them? And who's doing the projecting? And is the one that is projecting a sense of self onto that, is it offended? Is it concerned about what the world does or doesn't do? Notice, in order to be concerned or antagonistic or averse to the world or attached to the world, something has to arise that takes that position. We don't notice that because it happens so reflexively that we don't notice that's happened, and we say, that's me. I don't like it. Now, it uses the word I, just like Siri does, just like those robots do. But is that actually somebody? Is there somebody there, or is it just the words I appearing in the screen of the mind? Is that I real? And I'll give you a hint. If you can look at it, it can't be you. So it isn't a real I, it is only the thought of I. And the thought of I has no meaning or power or authority whatsoever unless you, who actually are the I, claim it as your own. Did I break that down thoroughly enough for you, Carl? This is the place where we have to look. When these things start coming up, especially after we've had some kind of a deep awakening or insight, and maybe even touched, as you said, the feeling of peace and being, right? All sorts of stuff is going to come to the surface to pull you back into personhood, to make you re-identify with the mirage. It's got a momentum to it. And remember, it has been capturing your attention for a very long time. So don't be surprised when the attention reflexively goes back to it. What do? Oh, it caught me again, but I can see it. Because I can perceive it, it obviously is not me. No matter what the thought is, it can't think itself. It must appear to me. And that thought wasn't here 5 minutes ago. So, and I am. So the thought has no real substance or stability to it unless I believe it. The same thing is true about the feeling. The feeling of aversion comes up. Right? But if there's nothing there that claims that feeling and says this shouldn't be here, then then it's just a feeling. It'll be there for a moment and it will pass away. But if something claims it and owns it, it'll actually persist, right? Because now it's got, ooh, good. Oh, I've landed. Somebody picked me up, right? Somebody's owning me now. Good. I'm getting fed. Yum, 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 yum. But if you stay here, they all become visible. But this is where our spiritual maturity begins. To stay as, abide as the witnessing awareness, and noticing on an increasingly subtle level all the places our attention becomes entwined, intermixed with it, and all the places in which we then re-identify with the person. Once we do, we'll identify with the person. Before, you just identified with the person, you didn't even think of it. Now, the person is somebody, the person you're identifying with is somebody who's a seeker, who's tasted being and now doesn't like the world and wants to get away from it. What's the difference? What's the difference between that one and the one who thinks, God, the world is great. I want all this stuff. Gimme, gimme, gimme. There's no difference. They are both activities of consciousness. The seeker is also an activity of consciousness. It's a better activity. It's a better state for sure than somebody who's just kind of blindly going along. Just no questioning of the mirage whatsoever. But nonetheless, it is still an activity, an action being seen on the screen of the mind. So how is that, Carl? There's no problem with your home and your work life. None. It's fine, just the way it is. You need to see it as it actually is. When you see things as they actually are, you will see the face of God everywhere, because that's what it is. And that face of God is your face. Mary said, I read that surgeon's book. It was great. Yes. There's also the book, My Stroke of Insight, by Jill Bolt Taylor. Fantastic. Thank you, Mary. Yes, it is really good when you hear people who were the most staunch, strict materialists ever suddenly say, I was wrong, and have the humility to do so. The other interesting thing about his case is that it was written up in the neurological journals. And when they went to publish it, the journal came back, the peer review came back and says, well, how do you have to explain what happened, right? Because not only did he have the experience when none of the neocortex was actually functioning, it all came back. It all repaired itself, which never happens. It's like one of the most horrible bacterial diseases you can get. And it should have just been lights out permanently. Okay? But it all restored itself, all of it. He said it was in about 6 months, right? Language came back within a couple of days. His memory started coming back. All of a sudden, it just like rebuilt itself. And the doctor said, their explanation that they finally gave to the journal was, it was a near-death experience and it had this effect. And the journal accepted it as their hypothesis because it's inexplicable, right? But the fellow is certainly transformed. That's a fact. Although listening to him, there was definitely still the sense of a person there. He hadn't really, he had touched experientially the deep time, he called it, this space totally beyond, totally benevolent, totally loving, but there was still a sense of a person having a life, which is really very, very interesting. But I just kind of see these gates of awareness opening up in humanity, which makes me very happy. Brent, amazing intro, G. Will the desire to experience myself as an object ever fully dissolve? I am what sees this desire to just touch what I truly am. Well, yes, the desire to experience yourself as an object. I want you to look at that very closely. The desire to experience as an object, is that not something being perceived? Is that not an activity of human consciousness? And so notice that hidden in there is an I that owns that desire. When will I not have the desire to experience myself as an object? Without that I, the desire would have no legs. It would have no suction cups. It couldn't attach to anything. Without that I is so subtle. It's invisible. Right? It's this sense that arises simultaneously with the desire. It's not there all the time. Right? We think it is, because that which is here all the time has projected its consistency and its constancy onto that which is not here all the time, which is that sense of self. So look at that desire. There is a desire that arises that announces itself as, I have the desire to experience myself as an object. Is that I real? Does the desire truly have an owner, or is the owner included in the desire? Have they arisen together? Dependent arising is what Buddha called it. The sense of the desire arises, and the sense of somebody who owns that desire arises with it. And then that somebody either is completely immersed into it because they don't know any better, or they say, this desire is here. How do I get rid of that desire? That's the seeker mind. It's there now. The seeker sense of I. How do I get rid of it? Okay. Notice that I is the activity of consciousness, and something deeper is witnessing that and projecting itself and seeing itself as that. Okay? Of course, there's something even more subtle that's seeing the seeing. We don't have to get there right away. Are you following this, Brent? This is subtle territory for you. And you can see how subtle and the tentacles of I. Everything is I. Everything. You talk about you, but they call it second person and third person for a reason, because it's all in relation to I. Everything is in reference to this I. What is the I? So the I arises with every thought, every desire, a thought that arises and there's no I there to claim it immediately dissolves. Well, they immediately dissolve anyway, but there's the sense of I is very subtle. It's not really a thought, an emotion, or a sensation. It is there is the sense of I that is the firstborn. It is simply awareness aware of itself. And then within that arises a point of perception. That point of perception is perceiving itself. It is perceiving awareness itself. But that point of perception gives rise to what we call the universe, and an experience of myself, the infinite self, as this. So experience trees and squirrels and computers and cars and people and sunlight and galaxies and quasars and nebulae, etc. Okay. Those are all the perception of the self, not a world. That's the mirage. The world is a mirage projected on the self, because there's nothing here but the self. And that arising in that point of perception is the I that identifies with the point of perception. But it also is being perceived by what? Even the sense I am is being perceived by that which is beyond all perception. It cannot be perceived. Like the eye can't see itself, a finger can't touch itself. You cannot know yourself as one thing knows another. So this is not our conventional knowledge. This kind of wisdom is jnana knowledge, or Vedantic knowledge, the knowledge that is not subject and object. How is that, Brent? And anybody else who may be ready to hear that? Right? And if you're not, if that goes right by you, don't worry, not a problem. Facebook user, where are all of these people? How do I get on Zoom with the other students? It's not on Zoom, right? This isn't a class. I do a broadcast. If I do something on Zoom, or actually I have another one called Brave that I use, then it is a more private setting where I can work with people, but it is more private, and so we can go more deeply into things. But this is my weekly, open to everyone, open format, and I'm just answering questions that come up either from Facebook that show up here for me, and from YouTube. So if you want to get into one of my actual classes and interact, just go to my website, gpwalsh.com. Couldn't be easier. And from there you can find all the things that I'm doing, both pre-recorded and live stuff. And there will be some more live stuff coming up. I haven't done it for a while because I've been putting some other things together and having to let go of some things that I just couldn't keep up with anymore, namely my patron program. So, which reminds me, those of you who may have been my patron program and did not see the email, I am discontinuing the patron program on my site. It's just too much work for me to maintain. And just kind of looking at the stats, nobody was actually using it anyway. People were just using it as a way of donating to help me pay for all this, because it all comes out of my own pocket, and I am not independently wealthy. So if you do want to donate, I have kind of reestablished my Patreon account. It's not my favorite. I prefer something else, but I just don't have the bandwidth to try to figure a bunch of stuff out. So if you do want to donate to help keep this on the air, as people have been for the last 6 years, I think that's how long I've been doing it now, the Sunday satsangs, just go to Patreon/GP Walsh and sign up. And unfortunately, I can't take donations like wheat and rice and fruit and stuff, chickens. They don't do that. They only deal with currency, but they do deal with pretty much every currency in the world. So there's my little passing of the hat moment, since we're all in church, right? So thank you, Facebook user. So I hope that answers your question. GP, you said even your hair is conditioned. Everything, when I talk about conditioning, I simply mean conforming, taking form. That's all it is. Energy takes form. That's what it does, right? It never loses its essential nature as energy. It cannot be created or destroyed, but it's always changing form. So everything is energy that is simply in a form, right? That's all it is. That's what Einstein revealed, that there's an enormous amount of energy, and you split one of those atoms and it's like wham, wham, bam. So everything is a temporary conforming or taking form of a substance which in itself is formless. It's like, an ice cube, right? Temporarily it's solid, and then it dissolves back into water or into gas or whatever. So everything is like that. The solid things like mountains and oceans and stuff, and the very subtle things like thought. Everything is that. But even energy is a concept we have of some kind of a substance that is making a world. And I'm trying to point you to the fact that that's a concept, that energy is a concept, and that which is really appearing as form is consciousness. Consciousness makes the universe, not matter. There is no matter. There is only consciousness taking form. And we touch on that when we see that energy can't be created and destroyed, and that the form it's taking is not real in and of itself. It's simply an appearance momentarily, and it's constantly changing. It's never the same, right? And it needs to be constantly changing. It never solidifies actually into form. The ice cube isn't the best example. It never actually solidifies into a form. The form is only how it appears as it transitions from one state to another. Nothing actually ever exists in and of itself. It's always an appearance of something else. So what is it that everything is an appearance of? What is it that is independently without anything else? It is it. The basis, the absolute. You can't go any further. And that's you. The I am prior to I am. That which actually is not a particle. It is awareness itself. So, Remington, hi GP, thank you for doing this. Does our pursuit for the highest truth of the world lead to actual physical action, or do we stay solely in the non-action of meditation? For you, right, it will be both. What I really encourage people to do is to not, as we're seeking the highest truth, as we're seeking the truth, not of the world, because the truth of the world is the truth of you. You have projected yourself onto the world, right? So if you want to know the truth of the world, you find out who you are, because the world is nothing but the mirror of you. And by you, I do not mean the sense of a person or the functioning of an individual body-mind complex. Right? That is simply an appearance in consciousness that we've identified with. I'm talking about the consciousness itself that is aware of it. Right? Now, taking that up in the role of the honest spiritual seeker, like there is a specific thing we have to do eventually. I was just continuing with his question there. To not immediately get it as a concept and then start trying to make your life conform to it. It's a subtle trap, right? Let your life go as it's already going. Do what is before you. And you'll notice how it will shift. It will change. It does anyway, but now it will be shifting and changing as it begins to align more and more with who you discover yourself to be. But I see people, they get this new idea, they run off and grab it, and all it really does is reinforce the sense of a person improving themselves. Right? Improvement will happen. So don't take it upon yourself to try to embody the insight. Right? you'll eventually see that that's more of the same. That's a sense of a personal self, a separate self, kind of appropriating non-dual language or spiritual character or activity and the like. And instead, let this all change just very, very gently and naturally. So if you're drawn to meditation, meditate and purify the meditation. The highest meditation is simply withdrawing all of your attention from everything that you can perceive. You don't make it go away. Meditation is not trying to make thoughts stop. It's not trying to get to samadhi, to some altered state of consciousness. It's very practical. It's very right here and right now. It's very earthy. I'm just noticing that thoughts come and go, and I have a habit of going with them, of identifying, of engaging with them, of getting into the story. And the moment that happens, that's the identification. So I notice that. I notice the thoughts come and go, and I don't engage with them. The same thing with feeling. Very strong feelings can come up. Very intense feelings can come up. And then the story, and what am I going to do about this? How do I get rid of this? And in real meditation, you'll just notice that that's there, that there's a whole cascade of reactions when an intense feeling comes in. And yet there's something there that it is witnessing that. And and your attention goes to the witnessing more than the content. And the same is true of even of physical illnesses and stuff that's going on in the body. That's the meditation that is truly withdrawing identity from the functioning. It is pulling back the mirage and just letting the desert be the desert. And there's other kinds of meditation that do all sorts of stuff, and that will have an effect of reducing stress and lowering blood pressure and other kinds of things. But that's the side effect. Don't invest in that. If you keep meditation to that, you'll notice that it is non-action. Right? You're not acting. You're just watching. You're witnessing. And witnessing, you don't actually do you? It's just always happening. You don't have to make the eye gather light. It just does. That's what it does. It's all effortless. This is what it really means. It doesn't mean, oh, I can't act now. I can't do this. Okay? There will be a sense of doing. It's fine. Leave it. It's not what's important. Keep bringing your attention back to the witnessing of it, which is absolutely effortless. And as you do that, it will become pure and pure and pure. And in the meantime, just live your life, right? Just do what comes up, do the things you're interested in, and allow your inquiry to adjust, to drop some desires, to enhance others, to remove the intensity from them until the sense of your deepest desire to know yourself gets pure and pure and pure, not because you've tried to make it pure by being spiritual, right? But because it's just happened, because you're touching your own innate purity. Okay. Okay, Remy, my man. Love you, brother. Hello, persistent ego. Hi from Montreal. It really is just a case of letting the cycles repeat themselves till they evaporate, isn't it? Notice, don't judge, forgive, let go, and trust that the work is doing itself. Yeah, yes, and no, but there is an action to be taken. That noticing, just not judging, just being the pure witness is kind of the baseline, right? It's kind of the place from which you start, because at this point there'll be an enormous reduction in suffering, right? Because you're not holding on to anything, you're not taking a position, you're not trying to make something right, something else wrong. But you'll find that's got layers to it and levels, and there's a lot of habitual stuff there. And so that kind of what I call the yoga of allowing, right, or the yoga of equanimity, is maturing to the point where there can be just this sense of equanimity and contentment and a marked reduction in suffering and an increase in all of the most noble characteristics, the compassion and love and kindness and patience and gentleness and understanding and wisdom. Right? Now, who is it that's not judging? Who is it that's not forgiving? This is the other part of it, the self-inquiry part, right? Which, as I said, just the allowing part, the pure witnessing will have the most beautiful redemptive effect on the whole system. Now, in this place, right, where you don't have any issue, the judging's not happening, you don't see it as yourself, pose the question, who am I? Who is it that's, I see the judging, it's coming and going. The forgiveness just happens because I find everything to be innocent. That sense of letting go. Well, who is it that's watching that? Who am I? You know, the who am I question is not just who I am not. Eventually, it combusts into self-realization. And it must. And so, while that practice of allowing is going on, right, and all practices are temporary, at some point, there's nothing in you anymore that resists. But in that space, pose that question deep inside. And when you do, you'll find that will trigger some stuff to come up in the mind. It'll start answering that. There'll be impressions and images and stuff that'll come up. But because of the practice of allowing it, it's just an image. It's not who I am because I'm looking at it. So it can't be me. I'm looking at it. So who am I? And this is the depth of the inquiry. And the answer to that question will have to be you, the real you. Not a thought about you, not a concept of you, but the actual direct experience of yourself. So thank you, persistent ego in Montreal. Hello, Bernadette. Janalia Devi. Jay Na from Bellingham. Hello, Jay Na. Sue, hello, GP. The process of exploring who I am brings peace, compassion, and unconditional love with it. What you usually refer to as the fruits of the tree. I find myself attracted to that, which is a condition in itself. Obviously, I wouldn't want to feel bad in the process. And at the end, so although the activated awareness is accepting everything, the effects are one-sided. Or at least it is my preference for now? Question mark. Nice question. Nice question. Yes, it will bring peace, compassion, and unconditional love with it. That's the perfume, right? But we really want to know that of which those are attributes, right? Because we still have an idea of somebody who is peaceful now, is compassionate, is experiencing unconditional love. And there's that sense of the person is still there that says, I want to hold on to that. And of course you do. I mean, duh. Nobody's going to say, oh, this feels too good. I want to feel crappy again, right? I want to feel discontent and indifference and very conditional love and judgment. Nobody says that. So it's great. Okay. This is the fruits of the Spirit. What's the Spirit? And just notice that part now that says, I really want to hold on to that. I don't want to let it go. And you go, of course you don't, right? But now look at that. What is that? Obviously, that is still the sense of self that sees itself as vacillating between two worlds, right? somebody who has to get to peace. Somebody has to get to compassion. We're still seeing it as there's the self, the real me, God, pure awareness is there, and I'm here. Right? The sense of separation is it's gotten increasingly subtle, and you can rejoice in that because the end of the game is near. Right? It's increasingly subtle and hidden, but it's hidden in the thought of I. It's hiding behind the I, kind of an invisible influence. Who's exploring who I am? Really try to take that to heart. Who's doing the exploring? Right? And notice there's a sense of a me. Now, a mature, a very mature spiritual seeker seeking this. Right? There are still two. I am still seeking God. Right? But if there is only one, then that which is watching both the seeker and the seeking is the very thing that is being sought. It is the one who is being sought. All consciousness is that one. So the witnessing power, the witnessing is the self. The mind keeps saying it's somebody else and the self is over here. And we've bought that. And in the buying of that, the identity as the seeker has arisen, which again is a very advanced state. Thank God we have it, right? Otherwise we get, a lot of nasty stuff. This is a rarefied place. This is a place of great peace and openness and compassion. We could build a functioning society out of that, right? But it's not the end of the show. It too is being watched. There's still a sense of somebody seeking. Who is aware? And now look really closely. All the seeker is a very much perceivable attribute, subtle but perceivable. And these kinds of feelings and interests, and right. If it's perceivable, it can't be me. The real you is the self already. And the sense of the seeker is something appearing on the screen that the self is witnessing. That self, you can call it the I am, you can call it God, Buddha nature, it doesn't matter. It's you. You are that. Now your mind will just, no, the mind, no, the mind can't exist without the sense of separation. That is the egoic mind cannot exist without the sense of separation. The mind seen in its purest form is the self known. Even the mind dissolves into the self. Is this helping you, Sue? So allow that feeling of preferring this over that. Of course, only an idiot wouldn't. Right? But don't purchase the sense of identity of one who favors one over the other. Notice that they're just movements in consciousness of preference. And without a sense of identity taking hold of them, it's just a movement that has no meaning or power or authority. Thank you, Sue. I'm sure you'll let me know if that works, if that's a good answer for you. Robbie in Romania, what's your view on entertainment in general? I know it's a human need, and I believe nowadays it can be easily more distracting and degrading rather than informative or awe-inspiring. Thank you. Well, yes. I mean, what we're seeing because of the inherent distortion and corruption of the egoic mind, and its love of greed, right? It simply wants to reduce everything to the lowest common denominator, right? Because it doesn't really even know what it wants, right? I can watch some things that are entertaining, and they'll be very satisfying. And there's a certain kind of quality to it. Even comedies and silly stuff, or romantic comedy, or something that doesn't really have much to it, right? There can still be a quality of genuineness and even artistry to it that satisfies. Okay? It doesn't have to necessarily be a documentary about something, right? And then you have those things like soap operas that just go on and on and on and on. I mean, there's one soap, I think Days in Our Lives, and it's still on. It's older than I am. It like started in the 30s on radio and went to TV when I was like 2 or something like that. It's like, if that doesn't describe Shiva's wheel, I don't know what does. It just keeps going and going and going. Yet there are people who get absorbed in it. We have to simply be introspective enough to say, I want to be distracted right now. And with a conscious awareness of that, you might just say, okay, I'm going to be distracted right now. But when it's not conscious, it becomes a habit, becomes an addiction. It becomes something that that will take you over, right? Because there is a natural aversion of the egoic mind to self-examination. It doesn't want to be uncovered. It doesn't want to be discovered. And when I say that, it's the robot trying to hide that it's a robot, right? There's nothing there hiding, right? It's only our misperceptions, right? So even the ego is you. It is you projected out on the world, thinking you see. It's like the kitten looking in the mirror, thinking it sees another kitten. Right? It is the sense of self highly reduced down to this really kind of dumb I. And if you see that, then you'll know when is it time to just kind of let it go and kick back and watch something you feel like watching. Muji, my teacher, actually watches soccer games. He enjoys soccer games. He'll root for a team. I don't have a team. I don't really care. But once it gets going, I start rooting for somebody. I do the same thing every now and then. I'll be sitting somewhere, and there'll be a football game on. It'll get my attention. I'm watching American football, right? And for some reason, I find myself, I'm always rooting. I'm never neutral about it, right? I'm always rooting for whoever's losing. And if they start winning, then I start rooting for the other team. I'm always rooting for the loser. That's why everybody I vote for never wins. That's not true. But anyway, so it's a matter of being introspective. And both being willing to say, yes, I am distracting myself, and sometimes just cutting yourself some slack and just say, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway. But is there an ongoing devotion to knowing yourself as you truly are? And a wisdom that has awakened that knows for a fact that will be resisted. That the grinding momentum of old habits will continue and continue to come up, right? And at some point you go, okay, that's okay, right? That's how you mature. These things have to come up, right? We need adversity. If we don't get challenged, we become complacent. It's that simple. Thank you, Ravi. Facebook user. I love this, GP. Thank you. I'm crying. What was the Facebook user? What did I answer? My conditioned hair? Well, thank you, Facebook user. There is a place on Facebook. It's up in the description. There'll be a link where it will give Facebook permission for your name to appear. Because I on YouTube, I will see well, not your real name, but whatever name of your account. And on Facebook, I will, if you give it permission, then I know who you are. And since there's several Facebook users here, so anyway, let the tears come. Yeah. So there's a recognition, the recognition of some deep truth that touches us often brings tears. Sometimes laughing, but often brings tears. Brent. Hey, Brent, your response resonated deeply, G. Going to listen a few more times to let it marinate. Thank you so much. You're very welcome, Brent. Very welcome. You are quite ready to chew on it at this level. Persistent ego. What to do when it has become apparent that everything is a projection distortion, and have the feeling of having fallen into a trap where the only position that feels safe is extreme relativism. Very good. Well, it is extreme relativism, right? Everything is relative to everything else, right? Now, if you can grasp that within a field of compassion, you'll realize that the entire world is fighting with each other over a point of view, trying to assert that their point of view is the point of view. But if you know that there is no ultimate point of view, then every moment becomes an opportunity to deal with that moment, not from a preconceived notion of what we think it is, but a genuine experience of what it is, and then to even be present with it with a higher set of values. Right? Because what should be done in any given time is always relative. Everything is relative. Everything is seen from the perception of something else, right? I mean, it's always a perspective, and no two people are ever going to see the same thing in the same way. So, and as long as that's the case, there could be arguments, right? Even coming to blows and wars over it. Or we could recognize that no position is absolute and instead seek peace, seek harmony, seek whatever it is in this moment that needs dealing with, that is the most beneficial to all. Now, when I say that, that's a particular ideal that I feel is beyond relativism. Love. I don't see love as something as relative. Right? It's an absolute. Right? It is the nature of being itself. Harmony. And extrapolate love out to the nth degree, and what do you get? Universal harmony. Right? Extrapolate hate or contradiction or ego out to its logical conclusion, and you get complete self-destruction, which is exactly what we're seeing going on in the world. So knowing that it is a projection, right? When the ego relies on the relative view and asserting that its relative view is correct, that's how it props itself up. So when you see that, oh my God, it isn't, it feels like quite a threat to the egoic mind. Now, you're not the egoic mind, but you will feel it within yourself as that threat and take it personally, like it's me. As you said, I have the feeling of having fallen into a trap, right? Well, that feeling isn't you. That feeling is the reaction to the insight that none of this is stable. None of this is absolute. None of it is trustworthy. You can't build a house there. You'll be building on sand. And in comes the wave, and away it goes. Right. So everything is a projection. Right. Knowing that, the deep desire can arise of, all right, it's all relative. It's all a projection. Nothing is what I think I think it is. What isn't a projection? What is stable? What isn't relative to something else. Now, some may say there isn't anything, right? But I would say, yeah, there is, right? And you experience it all the time. There has been something in your life that has been absolutely consistent and unchanging as far back as you can remember. There was something experiencing, witnessing your life. Whether you were 5 years old, playing with trucks or dolls or toys or whatever it was, 10 years old, 50, anywhere along the line, the experience, what was experienced, has changed. But has the consciousness that was witnessing it, has that changed? It's a subtle thing to explore. Because if that's true, we have found that rock upon which we can build. We have found that which is stable, that which is not changing. And from there, we can anchor ourselves and have that absolute point of reference by which everything else can be brought into harmony. Because if it's all just unstable relativism, harmony is not possible. There has to be a point of reference. Relative means relative to something, right? If it's just relative to something else that's relative to something else, what do you got? You can't solve an equation without at least one constant, right? What is the constant? The constant is you. You've been there the whole time. You may have felt differently. You may have thought of yourself differently. You may have totally different experiences, but you have been there. There has been a sense of you that has been there. What's the nature of that? If I know the nature of that you, I have the rock upon which an entire world can be built. My entire life can be built on that, and it will not move. It will not be blown down. It will not vacillate, because it is built on that which is the absolute unmovable truth. And that's the nature of truth. When I say the truth of being, the truth isn't something that fluctuates. Truth can't be true 1 minute and false the next. Those are theories, those are hypotheses, those are ideas, those are perceptions, which can change. But that to which the perceptions are appearing, that which recognizes perception as perception, is that changing? Or is that stable? Powerful. It is so powerful, because that's where you will lose. Where did it go back? Where there you are. That's where it'll stop being. The projection and the distortion will not have any kind of negative emotional content to them. It won't feel as if it's a problem that needs to be solved anymore. In fact, it'll be, oh, wonderful. I have been investing in that which was relative as if it were permanent. No wonder I'm screwing things up. It's not permanent. I'm trying to get it to act permanently, and it can't. So I want to anchor myself in that which isn't going to move. And the only thing that qualifies for that is the truth of your being. Truth is the only thing that cannot change. By definition, that which is real does not become unreal, and the unreal can't become real. It's a hard line. And and that means truth is true in all places, in all times, which means it's true now. The truth of you is true now. You don't need to make it true. That's why I keep saying you are the self. It is the truth. You can't not be the self. There can only be the thought that says you aren't. If it is believed, it literally creates an entire sense of existence as if there was somebody there who was not the self. But even that experience is experienced by what? By the self, by the consciousness. Yep, that can be the experience. Consciousness can experience anything. There are no limits to what consciousness can speak. Can anything come up that consciousness can't receive? It has no bounds. It has no borders. It has no limits. It cannot be put, it cannot be stuck in any form, and yet every single form can appear in it and will be made of it. It is the universal substance. Is this helping, Mr. Persistent or Miss Persistent? I'm not sure which. Ego. So the only position that feels safe, and that's such an important thing, because that's what we're looking for, that feeling of safety. And that's why people hold on to a relative position and try to make it as if it's an absolute truth, because they want to feel safe. Because we inherently don't feel safe. The false sense of self can't feel safe, and that's a good thing. Where can we feel safe except that in the place that doesn't move, that doesn't change? That is the ultimate of safety. The self is the great refuge. Thank you there, persistent ego, and perhaps the ego won't be so persistent. Diana, hello Diana. Thank you, GP, for the beautiful teaching. Can you please talk how to deal with the constant inner critic? Make friends. The inner critic, and we all have them, okay? We all have that voice, right? That no matter what you do, it says, yeah, that was good, but you know, we all have it, right? Notice I'm laughing because I laugh at it, right? The inner critic, let me ask you this question. If, I don't know if you've got an iPhone or an Android, right? You're talking to Siri or whoever is on the Android, right? And they keep criticizing you, right? The program, you've now downloaded the latest version, right? And this is a bitchy Siri. Right? And no matter what you ask, she goes, well, that was stupid. Why are you asking that? You don't need to know that. God, you don't do anything right. Now, if that was just a program on your phone, it was Siri, what would you do? This is nonsense. You wouldn't pay any attention to it, right? If the village idiot calls you stupid, you don't pay any attention, right? But for some reason, something inside says that voice is important. This voice is true. This voice is somebody. Is the inner critic an entity or a program? It just happens to be running in the brain computer or the mind computer, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. Right? There's nobody there. There's nobody actually criticizing. It is just criticizing thoughts. Now, if you are not your thoughts, and if suddenly you recognize that the inner critic is completely insignificant, it's just echoes from the past. It's the critical voice of mom, right? That's still echoing there, and it's not you. It's got nothing to do with you, and it's not telling the truth. There's no identification with it anymore. It's not even a problem, right? Because even saying it's a problem I've got rid of, I have to get rid of, gives it a power and authority it doesn't actually have. You've given it that power and authority. It's just Siri, right? Siri the bitch, instead of Siri the helpful, right? But does it have any power? None. Absolutely none. So when the inner critic comes up, oh, there she is again. Hello, good evening. May I take your order, please? I mean, it's just a thought. That's all it is. But we project on it meaning and importance and significance, and this idea it's very popular in self-help and positive psychology. We have to get rid of all these negative thoughts because they're causing our life to be horrible, and all this stuff, and I'm not prosperous, and I don't have a good relationship because of these horrible thoughts. Look at all the power we're giving something which is just a thought. And a thought that arises, and there's nobody there to take ownership of it. Where does it go? As Buddha put it, if somebody gives you a gift, but you don't take it, where does it go? Boom. There is no inner critic. There's no critical entity there. There are only criticizing thoughts that have not been scrutinized. There is no inner critic. There's nobody there criticizing you, separate from the thoughts. So even throw away the idea of an inner critic, right? Because that, seeing it like that, which a lot of people do, almost turns it into kind of an entity that keeps throwing thoughts at you. And as long as you believe it to be an entity, it'll keep coming up with more thoughts. It's not, you are. But attributing it to that as if there was this prolific source of criticizing thoughts. There's only the criticizing thought, which is just a habit instilled on you from mom or dad or somebody way back there that got put in there, that became a pattern, right? Because mom did it, I'm going to do it. It's in doing the same thing to suppress something inside of us. We don't even have to explore any of that. Just go, oh, it's not me. And there is no inner critic per se. There's no inner judge. There's just a flow of these thoughts that I have taken ownership without knowing it. And I remove all of my energy from them. And guess what? They don't have any energy of their own. If I don't make them a problem, they cease to exist. If I don't hold on to them in any way, if I form no relationship with them whatsoever, relationship being I really like that thought, I want to keep it, or relationship, that's horrible, I've got to get rid of it. In both cases, you're forming a relationship with it. You are energizing it, and you're literally holding it there. Go away, go away, go away, go away. It just sits there. Nah, I don't think so. But it's, oh, you're not even real. There's nobody there. It's bitch Siri. And that's going to be a new slogan we're going to have. Siri the bitch. Is that helping, Diana? Thank you. Sue says, very helpful. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Hey, Peter. Good evening from Italy. GP and everyone. I'm getting ready for another night shift. I'm going to see this wonderful satsang later. Much love and gratitude. Pulling the night shift. Okay, Peter. Hey, there's my buddies, David and Elaine. Wonderful introduction, satsang G. Cutting through the illusion of separation into the heart of the true self. When we abide in this presence, true happiness is inherent, as this is our true nature. Yes. And if we're not feeling that happiness, don't give that any meaning. This is really important, because the contentment, the happiness that David and Elaine are talking about, is not an emotion that comes and goes. It's more of a contentment. And you can recognize that even when there's these feelings of discontent and unhappiness that are there, that they're being experienced in a place that's extremely stable and quiet. And that's the true ananda. That's the true bliss of Satchit Ananda. That's the true contentment, the unmoving self. It is not, Satchit Ananda, being, consciousness, bliss, are not, they're words to try to describe the singular unified wholeness of being. It's utter stillness. Being, you exist. Consciousness, you know that you exist. And consciousness and the knowledge of, or the being existing and the knowledge of being are one. You couldn't have one without the other. And that in unmovable, unchanging, is the ananda of being. So this happiness is not the happiness, the natural happiness that comes, a good thing happens, a new relationship or a new car, or, you get a raise or something wonderful happens. Yeah, there's a happiness. Somebody gives you a gift. There's the emotional elation. But notice that comes and goes. And that's okay. You don't want it to stay around. You don't want to remain in. Oops, sorry. I just knocked something off my desk here. Something obviously metal. So it was wake up. Everybody wake up. Those of you who are sleeping, that should have gotten you. So anything that comes and goes, you let it come and go. It's not a problem. Right? It's when we pursue that which comes and goes and try to make it permanent. It's not its nature. It can't be permanent any more than you could freeze the body as it is, because the body is a process of constant overturn. You can't stop it or life stops. So you can't freeze it. You can't, nothing can stay the same. It can't. It's not possible, right? So just understand that, and that the recognizing that you are the true self, no matter what the mind says, right? And it will say otherwise, but you don't need its permission. You don't have to get its sign off on it. Right? You are the self, and just abide there, right? And you'll find a contentment that allows for the happiness to come, but also for the grief to come. Allow for love to come, but also the loss of love to come. You let life be what life is, but it doesn't disturb here. Right? The clouds move through the sky, but the sky is fine. The sky remains the sky, unmoved, unchanging. So, thank you, David and Elaine. You guys are great. Carl, thank you, GP. I'm not quite at the stage where I can experience my homework life as perfect God. No, good. The contradiction between what I feel and what I experience in the outside world exhausts me. No, it exhausts the idea you have of yourself. It can't exhaust you. It can't exhaust the self. The hurricane doesn't exhaust the sky, right? And the sky, when it all goes dark, reveals the universe. Matter of fact, we think of the sky, the blue sky and that, but at the night sky, we see the whole universe. The sky then is the universe, isn't it? Just notice that there's something attached to this contradiction between what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. And this is the most important place for you to put your attention, because that is where the separate self is hiding. Hiding in plain sight, I might add. It's the one saying the contradiction, I'm not quite at that stage. It's the one creating a separate self that is not the self. Right? And it's saying, oh man, I'm exhausted. Yeah, it's exhausted. It's got an impossible job trying to make the impermanent permanent. Yeah, it's going to be very, very tired, right? I equate it to holding a beach ball underwater. You can't do much else, right? God, I'm tired of holding this under. Well, let it go. Oh, can I do that? Yes, you could do that. And then the beach ball will do something. It'll bounce against you. Maybe it may hang out for a while, right? But your hands are off. It'll come and go, and eventually it'll be gone, or it'll sink or something, right? It'll get a puncture and go away. Right? So this is really, really important for you, right? Because you're really in touch with this desire to get rid of this and hold on to that. And what you're trying to hold on to now is the self. It's not like you're trying to hold on to, something in the world that's changeless. What you're trying to hold on to is the unchanging. But you have to be the unchanging, right? You can't hold on to it, right? Because you're not stable. So your grip is going to come and go. The only way you hold on to it is to know you can't hold on to it. You can only be it. If you are it, there's nothing you need to hold on to. And so this is incredibly important for you, because you're in a very subtle place now, where the sense of the person, the personal identity, the personal sense of self, is trying to claim being and peace for itself. It can't have it. Its nature is not peace. It is exactly the opposite. It is discontent. That one will never know peace. And the good news is you are not that one. So pursue it, Carl. Don't let this one go. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. This is Jacob's wrestling match with the angel. This is Christ's temptation in the wilderness. Carl, you're great. Brent, yeah, IGP. I hear some teachers say that we are being lived. This seems deterministic and disempowering to me. I'd love to get your thoughts. I root for the underdogs too. It is, it's the kind of thing that I might say. It depends on who the person is. I might actually say something like that. Yes, if I am identified with my life and somebody says to me, life is being lived, yeah, I'm going to feel like I'm a puppet. I'm being manipulated, right? It's where you have invested the I that's going to determine, right, which perception which guy takes the lead. But if I realize that life is appearing to me and that I'm the one that's living through it, that manifesting through it, is expressing myself through it, right, then I can say to the personal sense of self that you're not living your life, it's living you. And you can see how life is living us, right? And if I'm only identified with this person, then that's not going to feel very good, right? Well, that means I don't have any control, which is true. You don't. That which wants control doesn't have any, which is why it wants it, right? And it thinks somehow that's going to make me feel safe and better and all that. But look around. Life isn't, there's not somebody living life. Life is living. Life just is. Life is the word we give to all the functioning going on that is mysterious and beautiful, right? But, the tree isn't pondering how it's going to live. It isn't thinking I'm being lived by life, right? It is life, right? So it's not like life is living through it. It is life. This is life. This constant transformation, this constant form upon form, the seed within itself, reproducing after its kind, the incredible evolution and shifting and changing, and just the extraordinary beauty and subtlety and complexity of it all is life. It's not something separate from that. This flow of energy is life. What's witnessing that? Well, that's the true I. And so you could say somebody who's very attached to the personal identity, right, but is open, might be willing to hear that, oh, I'm being lived by it, and actually come with a sense of relief. Oh, I don't have so much of that responsibility. God is doing things for me. There's grace at work here. This energy of life is benevolent, but you are that life, but you are also the witness of that life. And in fact, what is life other than conscious awareness, aware of itself, and the infinite unfolding from the essence of awareness itself, the manifestation of awareness aware of itself. And this is what we call life. But we just simply regard life as an external process. We project a world on it. Is this process going on there that I am witnessing, that I am looking at, and the ego gets so far as to say, well, there's life and then there's me. Right? As if this body and mind and functioning is something other than that. It's part of the functioning. If I see that, I see my body, my emotions, my sensations, my thoughts, my memories are all just the functioning of life. That's all there is to it. Well, then what am I? Because that doesn't make an I. I mean, it doesn't make an I in a tree. It doesn't make an I in my dog, right? If I had a dog. So it means it's just a thought projected upon the flow of life. Oh, well then who am I? Because a functioning does not make sentience. As that neurosurgeon discovered, the brain doesn't give rise to consciousness. Well, then what is consciousness? In other words, what am I? Because I am consciousness. I mean, that's the only thing that's entitled to the word I, right? That which is aware, that which knows all the rest of it, that looks at nature and goes, wow, what is that? That's the true I, the I prior to the word I, the I prior even to the feeling of I. And so that particular phrase could have a usefulness on the right circumstances. Needless to say, it was not a phrase for you. It was not something I would use with you. Right? And this is one of the downsides, for all of the upsides of YouTube, which we're enjoying right now. One of the downsides is, something I will say for one person, somebody will pick up and think of it as, oh, it's an absolute truth, right? Oh, the guru said this, so it's true. No. It's always the interaction, right? In a forum like this where people are asking questions, I try to keep it general enough. But you'll notice a couple of times I say, well, for you, right? Because I can sense where they are and what words that need to be there for them, right? So not every word can be taken as an absolute truth. Nothing can be taken as absolute truth. There are no such things as absolute truths. There is only the absolute truth, which is being itself, which is you. The universal theme of being, which is manifest in absolutely everything. Like the fundamental ingredient. You can listen to music and a bunch of pieces of music. Oh yeah, that's Mozart. That's Jimi Hendrix, right? That's yes. Oh, that's Rachmaninoff, and you can identify it, right? But it's not Rachmaninoff. It's not Jimi Hendrix. They're not there. We see the energy reflected there, right? That we identify. Well, what's the most fundamental energy of all? That which is embodied in absolutely everything. Being. That's God. That's the self, which is everything. But in and of itself, you can't call it nothing. You can't call it everything. You can get close with things like shunyata or emptiness, just the infinite. But what is it? Well, it's not an it. You are not an it. You are unknowable, inscrutable, ineffable, beyond all. How's that, Brett? Did that clarify it for you? Brett. Sorry, Brent and Brett. Too close. Brent Newberger, and I saw Brett Newberger, so I ended up saying Brent. Brent New. Quack. Trucks. Okay. Trucks. Thank you. I suspect there might have been more to that than I might have missed. Or maybe it's Tourette's. Life truly is a gift, is it not? Yes, it is. It's a wonder, because what is life but the manifestation of the self? And without the manifestation, the self would just be unknowable, unknown. This is how God adores herself. I look at life. Look at the wonder, the miracle. I keep looking up at the corner because out my window there are these trees and this blue sky and squirrel running across my patio, and it's like, my God, God, this is you. This is God looking at herself and going, I am wonderful. I am adorable. I am mysterious. Mary continues, do you believe we inherit certain things? Or do you believe that they are learned? Well, when you're talking about the human being, it's both. And, we can argue about nature versus nurture and all of that. I think from an experiential point of view, and from the point of view of healing and awakening, it doesn't really matter, right? The human form, just looking at the human form, like every other form in the universe, is a particular play of different energies, and the different energies make different, unique, individual forms. Was it DNA? Was it ancestral? Right? But we also know that some characteristics seem to be inherent in us. Right? My love of music that I had from the time I was a child. That wasn't learned. Right? It just happened. Right? But other things like, our desire for bonding and comfort, our desire for a mate, our desire for meaningful work, these are inherent, right? We didn't make those. They weren't learned. They're just innate in the whole human mechanism. So there are things that are innate. Do you attribute them to the DNA? Do you attribute it to karma, some God principle? It doesn't matter, right? We can just start with what we know, and that is, there's traits that are innate. They're just there, right? And there's also this other environment that took this bundle of innate traits, which could have taken any kind of form, right? As a musician, I could have done, I could have taken up, the tuba, right? But I took up the drums, right? Later the piano. I could have anything. Right? At some point playing drums, I was also playing harmonic, blues harp, right? And singing. So it could have been any of those things. So the way in which those inherent tendencies forms is completely environmental, right? So the tendencies are there, and every individual form has unique tendencies, right? No two are alike, no two snowflakes, no two squirrels are alike. Everything has its uniqueness as well as its universality. That's the mystery of it and the miracle of it. How that appears will be completely dependent upon the environment. How free is it for those natural tendencies to come out in a form or in a medium or something? Or how restricted is it? How much is the environment trying to force it to be something other than what it is? And this is the inner conflict we feel. Our nature is to express ourselves. And when I say that, I'm talking about giving manifestation or giving expression to those natural tendencies. And the more we can do that, the happier we feel as the individualized being. And that's the happiness goes up and down. The more we can't, that's the suppression we feel, that's the defenses, that's where all the psychological and emotional problems come from. Right. But in either one of those cases, whether it be the most wonderful childhood in which you were completely expressed love, you could express yourself and it was loved and adored and the like, or completely shut down and abused, right? In both of those, the sense of a personal I emerges. Right? So there's no special dispensation for your upbringing and avoiding the egoic mind. It's inherent in every individual form as a human being. And that's the great blessing, because it's by transcending that we go beyond the individual to the universal, and you identify yourself now as the whole and not just an individual pairing of the whole. And this is when everything becomes yourself. I am all. Every being is my being. Every life is my life. Every joy is my joy. Every pain is my pain. Right? It is all me. But that me is not the personal sense of me. Right? It is. but that's what's transcended. But that is not a denial of the natural inherent qualities that make up every individual. It's not there's an individual there that possesses those. The qualities make the individual. It's a unique combination of qualities that make the individual. And then that unique set of qualities appears in an environment and conforms to that environment. And this is how all life works. And a sense of I emerges in there. When that sense of I is now seen through and the universal I is recognized, it also liberates the form. It no longer is bound by the environment that it had to conform to. It becomes liberated. Now, a lot of people in spirituality, and especially in self-help, they seek to liberate this, not realizing that it is inherently bound until the sense of I is freed from it. Then this is freed. Right? Then it can be fully what it is, and that's all it needs to be, and it'll go through its transformation and eventually dissolve in what we call death, but isn't. Because there isn't any death, just like there isn't any birth. Right? The I is forever. Does that help, Mary? Does that answer it for you? Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Alexia. Hello, Alexia. Hello, GP. Great satsang today. Thank you. How do you celebrate your creative artworks? For example, I love to write poems, songs, and paint. How can I not be identified with this? This body did this. Thanks. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, well, maybe you don't know, but I've been a musician all my life. That was my ambition. That's what I went to school for. It's all I wanted to do from the time I was a child. Very, very young. For a time, I wanted to be an actor. And I did some voice acting as radio and TV for a while. And voiceovers and that sort of thing, because I had a pleasant voice that people liked. But music was just like the thing. And looking back now on it now, I can almost pinpoint the time when it went from just the pure love of what I was doing. I was doing music because I loved doing music, right? To the point where it was suddenly I had to be a musician, right? And, you know, the pressure of you got to make a living, and you got to do this, and you got to, you've got to, all this kind of stuff has to happen, right? What I say is do this. You love to write poems, songs, and paint. Great. Don't become a poet. Don't become a songwriter, and don't become a painter. Sing, don't be a singer. And this can be an incredibly beautiful self-exploration to notice how the natural tendencies that I was just talking about in answer to Mary's question, and includes poetry. I love words, as you can probably tell. I love words. I love stories. I love poetry. Yeah, I just love putting the images together. And it served me, right? It serves what I'm doing, but I can't call myself a poet. I can't call myself a writer. I actually can't even call myself a teacher because I don't know what the hell I'm doing, right? A question comes up, I say whatever comes to my mind. If that's teaching, okay, but it's certainly not planned. It's certainly not organized. Whenever I try to organize it, I do a really bad job, right? So hold on to the love of that, because that's the natural tendencies that actually get compressed and squeezed out of shape by the ego attempting to own them, to commandeer them. My love of music got really pushed to the back by this drive to be a successful musician. And it for a while, it took all the fun out of it, took the joy out of it, to the point where I didn't even do it anymore. The whole 80s, I didn't do it at all. And then about the mid-late 80s, there's a lot of other stuff going on in my life, and I couldn't. It kind of came back, right? And it came back, and I was doing it, I was loving it, and then I want to do it, and then it happened again, right? The same thing happened, and it dropped away. And then it happened again. And actually, this is really amazing. It happened again, and I was writing all sorts of stuff when I was living in New York, and I had stuff from, I had like, 15 years worth of stuff. They're on all the MIDI files and the like. I mean, hundreds of pieces of music, right? The stuff just came, right? Hard to finish, but easy to start. Nonetheless, when I moved from New York down to Miami, I had the stuff. I had all my computers and the like. It was all on drives, and I had backups of all the music, right? And I had to stay somewhere for a while. The stuff was in storage. I then found a place. We moved everything down to Miami. It stayed in storage for a while because I had other stuff going on, and I thought, okay, it's time to get it back out again. It was gone. All of it. The disk drives and the backups. Nowhere to be found. That entire period of my life, gone. I had a few recordings. I had a couple of no, I didn't have any MIDI files so I could reproduce it. I had a few recordings, some of which were just like sketch ideas, but all the fully developed stuff, gone. Oh. Talk about having to let go. That was a death. That was a near-death experience for me, right? But it's taught me something. It's all gonna go. Right? I attended a Buddhist ceremony that was in Miami. It was really beautiful. They were there from the temple in Nepal where the Dalai Lama was. As a matter of fact, one of the monks that was there was with the Dalai Lama when he left Tibet to go to. It was just really a pleasure meeting them. They were doing some performances, not really performances, but of the music and how they train and that sort of thing. It was really quite beautiful. And during they had like 2 shifts of people. They'd put on stuff at one place, but over in the other place where they were staying and they had other activities going on during the day, they were making a mandala on the floor, sand mandala. I don't know if you've ever seen those. It's colored sand and this little thing that has a little bit of friction. It's a very tiny little thing. So the thing was probably 10 feet by 10 feet. And all the monks, I think they were like, it was going on for like 16 hours a day. They would be taking turns going in. And they worked on this thing for like 6 days. And then the 7th day came, which was the end of it. And we had a nice ritual where they picked it up and we all walked outside to the ocean and they dumped the whole thing into the ocean. It's like my music. Because everything is transient. Now, I think I'm digressing a little bit from your thing, but just let the poetry come. Don't take ownership of it. The ego is, I've used this analogy before. I actually got it from Francis Lucille. The ego is a circus clown. The acrobats perform without a net, death-defying feats, amazing skill. The audience jumps to their feet in a standing ovation, and the circus clowns come out and take a bow. That's the ego. Let the poetry be there. Let the songs be there. Love the song. Love the act of writing the song, the feeling of the song. Don't even judge the quality of the song. Because that's just somebody else looking at it. That now you have to become somebody looking at it from the point of view of a publisher or a record deal or something like that, or for the paint. Just let the love of it be there, and it will liberate whatever it is that needs to come through you. So how can I not be identified? Well, that's how you don't be identified. Don't let life express itself, right? And notice the impulse to want to take credit for it, but just be the witness of it, which doesn't need to take credit for it. It doesn't have a sense of this is mine. It's like it's too utterly intoxicated by the beauty of it. Doesn't need to own it. that help, Alexia? Facebook, thank you, GP. This song is the best. You're welcome. Yeah. Hearts and prayers from David and Elaine. Mary, thank you. The answer to Brett, you're welcome. Jay said, I was listening to the replay of Tapas Monks and to what Ava was saying. I was wondering if I were to accept the feeling, but on a subtle level wanted it to go away, that would keep my attention on that feeling. It sure would. But if your attention keeps going to it, you know for a fact that there's some identity there. Your attention keeps going to it. You go, okay. And so just step back and go, all right, I know you're here. I know you're here. Come on out. There's that feeling of wanting it. Don't fight with that feeling, right? Because the moment you start fighting with the feeling, I want it to go away. Now you want that to go away. You can see it's an endless loop, right? No way out. There is no way out. Right? So instead go, okay, there's the feeling wants it to go away. Of course, we want it to go. That's perfectly natural. All right, so there's that feeling there. Is it a problem? No, it's not a problem. Unless something is identified that makes it a problem. There has to be something there that says this is a problem. Like, I want it to go away, right? If this could just go away, right? Who is that? And yeah, it's so subtle. It's silent. It's often just silent, right? It's like an influence on it. It's like not, of course, that's what it is, because there's nobody there. There's nobody actually there who wants it to go away. Right? And so now you take a step all the way back and just, there's another energy there that wants it to go away. And there's another energy that wants that to go away. And I see all of it. Right? Well, who am I that sees it? Thank you, Jay. Thank you. Jay, that would keep my, Brent, thanks. You're welcome. Quack. Oh, you said when you were, okay, that's what the trucks was. You played with trucks. So did I. I played with trucks and army men and all sorts of stuff, and gun and holster, which every kid in the 50s did, right? With caps and stuff. Yeah. Trucks were apparently played with. Yes, there was no player with the trucks. There was only the playing. Very good, very clever. Great question, Jay. Looking forward to GP's answer. Did I answer it for both of you? Sorry about the question mark. Mary Sykes. I have a feeling what GP will say. Feels new. That's what I love about satsang. So, did you get it? Did I cover it? I wish people I talked to were more interested in this than cars, guns, politics, etc. Perfectly natural, Jay, because we've talked about this before with you, and it's totally cool. Totally cool. Yeah, just let that be there, right? And just notice that it's not you, right? That isn't where your heart goes. That there's nothing wrong with these people, but they're not going to be intimate companions. And then just let yourself be present with that solitude, and even with the wish, right, to have some kind of confirmation, companionship. Again, don't attach yourself to it. Let it be there. But again, use it as an inquiry into, okay, well, who is it that wants that? Not that there's anything wrong with the wanting, but am I creating any suffering myself? Am I investing into someone? Am I in a subtle way judging somebody? Use it as as an entry point into your deeper inquiry. Use everything, turn everything into food for the inquiry. Love you, Jay, and give my love to Suranda and the little ones. Gee, Satnam GP, any tips you can give to stay within being and live this fundamental truth within the corporate world? I'm a law student currently on a placement at a law firm. Thank you. All right, recognize this. I'm sensing that you can hear this. Recognize that being, when you say I'm to stay within being and live the fundamental truth. Okay. Now notice that there's a you here that's trying to stay within being. Now, does this not exist? The you that's trying to stay in being, right? Does that not exist? Obviously it does, but if it does, then it must be being too, right? And live the fundamental truth. Notice how there's a subtle way in which the truth is becoming something known. There's a me that knows the truth. What if the truth is the knower and not the known? Then you already are the truth. When we look for the truth as an idea, as something to be known, something to be grasped, we end up making this is the subject-object truth, this is theoretical truth, this is conceptual truth. But the truth is that which actually exists. It is reality. It is not a concept of reality, it is reality itself. Truth, reality, being. And the word sat and Satchidananda, being, also means truth, it means existence, it means reality. Right? It's what is. Right? Truth, being, same thing. Right? So being is the fundamental truth, right? But is that something known or is it the knower? Let the separation between you and being fall away. Are you anything other than that being? Now, your mind is going to argue with this. Yeah, but, and it's going to go off on something because the mind needs two. The mind can't let the sense of self that it's holding become one with anything, because if it does, it disappears. There's nothing there. The personal sense of self must exist in opposition to, or in harmony with, but with something other than itself. This is relative. This is the way the whole conceptual world works. We define this in terms of that. And everything is like that except knowledge of the self. Because it's not one thing knowing another. You can't know yourself as one thing knows as another. You can't be something knowing being. You must be being knowing being. And you do exist, obviously, right? Ask the question. We're talking now, right? And so solve that first. Don't worry about how to live it, right? That's the mind, right, that has already identified itself as something seeking the truth, trying to figure out what truth it has come to know and experience. Now, how do I apply this in a world that doesn't seem all that interested in it, namely corporations and legality and some difficult stuff for sure, right? You know, harshness and anger and a lot of stuff in the corporate world, just a lot of rules and stuff to follow. So you can drop needing a script or a strategy based on the idea that the true Vedantic or jnana knowledge of being is a concept that is adapted and then lived, right? There's a two-ness there. It doesn't. Being isn't lived by anything. It's doing the living. And in fact, it is being living as the corporate world. Even the corporate world can't exist without being, can it? and then don't project on it that somehow it exists outside of being. It can't. Nothing can exist outside of being, right? You can't have an existence in not being. So being is simply that which gives rise to everything else. Everything else that appears as existence derives from the fundamental reality of being. And what is that? Your own sense I am. The sense I am, that which is looking for the fundamental truth and wanting to stay in being, is being. That is the self. That which is looking for the self is the self. Right? This is simply the absolute oneness of it that your mind cannot grasp. So let that sense of separation, ponder it, contemplate it, stay with it. Notice how the mind can't grasp it, and then just withdraw from it. And then that will have a natural harmonizing effect on the entire energy system. And it won't need a strategy to live that out in practice and in action, no matter what world you're in, whether it's a corporate world or you're in a rock band. Polar opposites. You won't need a strategy. You'll find it's just happening because you're it. Your own natural capacity and sensitivity and innocence and love will just know what to do. Right? Even in the most harsh environment, even when itself needs to be harsh, it will be. There's no attachment to it and no aversion to it. It'll just, this is what's needed in this moment. This is what we're going to do. Thank you, G. G, meet G. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Plan, J, yes, and I believe we need to hear this over and over again. I never get tired of hearing it. I never get tired of saying it. So it works. Alexia, thanks. It was beautifully answered, straight to the heart. Great, good, great. Diana, yes, GP, very helpful. Thanks, profound. So grateful attempt from John. Same here, Jay. Mary, don't you feel the depths every time GP says it one more time again? Great answer to Jay. I'm feeling it. Yes, Jay. Thank you, G. When this question came to me, I'm actually seeing this whole thing going on. I was contemplating whether I should bring this up in satsang because I see the mind game. So the answer is obvious, but if it's obvious, then why ask? Oh well, let there be in the nature of the mind, no matter how much the heavy storm of thoughts. It's okay, right? It's because here's the deal. All of us raised with a certain degree, the nature of conforming to a culture, a society, and the like, means that there's a certain amount of self-validation or self-confirmation that you're not allowed to have. You have to defer to others. You have to look. There's an ultimate overarching rule. Now, if you're born in the West under the Abrahamic religions, that's an intense one. It's a very oppressive one, right? And you can't trust yourself for anything, right? So you can't validate yourself, right? So we don't learn how to do that, right? We don't learn how to have confidence and trust in what we have seen to be true. So when you go to the teacher and you bring up a question, even though you really know it, what it really is that part of us, that wounded part of us, that needs to begin to feel it's okay to validate and verify my own insights, to be self-confirming, okay? Which is the nature of the self. And part of the teacher's job is to do that. Is to validate you like you weren't validated before. When a child is validated, it doesn't become arrogant. It becomes self-validating. It becomes confident. It's able to say yes when it means yes and no when it means no, right? Which a lot of us can't. We get kind of stuck in this place. So part of the job of the spiritual teacher is to reawaken that and grow that, so that a self-trust emerges. It says, I see this and I know I see it. And I'm willing to be in the conflict with my own mind, which is disagreeing with me. And I don't have to get it to agree, and I don't have to defer to it. But the teacher comes along and helps you stand in that position. So it's quite all right for you to just bring it up because you feel the need to bring it up. You're allowed. Ava, GP's answer, clear and obvious, but I also need to hear these truths, this wisdom over and over again, as if I was forgetting them. And it seems I'm not forgetting, but the old habit of thinking, old patterns of thinking. These patterns of thinking are somehow persistent. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. But it isn't really the thinking patterns that are persistent. What keeps them in place is the subtle sense of identification. If we recognize that this is a repeating pattern, the real question is, okay, where are you? I know you're here. It's like a ghost, right? Okay, I know you're here. Stop hiding. And it is, because it's invisible. It's just kind of like this silent influence. So you see the effect of it. Oh, okay. And you can really ask, all right, where am I still identified? That's a different question, isn't it? Now the attention's not on the persistent thoughts. It's not something that have to be gotten rid of. You see that there's a mechanism in place, right? That they are somehow persistent. All right, so we're now understanding the mechanism of them being persistent. And in that, freeing up all of it, freeing ourselves from the persistent thoughts, freeing those persistent thoughts to dissolve back into an energy and go be something else. and freeing, just being free. Just being free. Being the freedom you are. Well, I've exhausted the queue. Nothing more here to do. It's time for me to have something to eat and to drop the teaching. All right, my lovelies, my friends, my dear ones. Until next week, for those of you who are joining us on Tuesday, thank you very much. I love you all. Love you all. Love you all. And namaste.